Hello everyone, it's Felicia here, and I am so excited to be recapping season 2 of Stranger Things for all of you lovelies, so let's jump right into it. It's been almost a year since the events of Hawkins turned upside down. Literally, Will Byers is back home, but life isn't quite back to normal. Season 2 kicks off with episode 1, Mad Max. We open not in Hawkins, but in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where a group of masked criminals speed away from a robbery and we see the police are close behind them. One of them, a girl with short hair and intense eyes, sits silently and focused. As the police close in, she shuts her eyes and mutters something under her breath. Suddenly, up ahead, a tunnel collapses. The police car slams on its brakes and crashes, but when the dust settles, the tunnel is still intact. The collapse never happened. The girl named Callie opens her eyes, her nose is bleeding, seem familiar, and on her wrist is a faded tattoo, 008, just like 11, another experiment child. She breathes heavily, and then the van speeds away. Transition back into Hawkins, Indiana. Everything looks peaceful as the boys, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will, ride their bikes and make their way to the arcade. But something is off. Dustin's top score on Dig Dug has been beaten by someone named Mad Max. Cue the mystery. The boys argue about who could possibly be Mad Max. Meanwhile, Will zones out and the lights of the arcade begin to flicker. He steps outside the arcade into what seems like the upside down. The sky has turned red, black clouds swirl above the town. In the distance, a massive spidery shadow creature looms over Hawkins. Will begins to tremble as the monster moves, and then he blinks and everything is back to normal. He sees Mike, who has snapped him out of his hallucination, and he realizes nobody else saw it. Poor Will. Back at school, while the boys are discussing who Mad Max could possibly be, we meet the new kid, Maxine, or Max, a cool and tough redhead with skateboarding skills, a mysterious past, and a stepbrother named Billy who looks like he came straight out of an 80s teen movie villain casting call. Dustin and Lucas are immediately intrigued by Max, but Mike, who is still heartbroken by Eleven's disappearance, just isn't impressed. Back at home, Joyce is dating a new guy named Bob Newby, played by Sean Astin, a personal favorite of mine. He is lovable, awkward, and safe. Bob is completely unaware of the supernatural events that have occurred in the past. He's a harmless guy who seems like he's going to bring a bit of comic relief to this season. We love Bob. Meanwhile, Chief Hopper is called to a pumpkin patch where all the crops are rotting. The soil is black, slimy, and gross. The farmer blames his neighbor, but Hopper finds similar decay at other farms too. Joyce, who is ever protective, takes Will to see Dr. Owens at Hawkins National Laboratory. Will gets examined and has some tests done, but Dr. Owens assures Joyce that Will is fine and that he is just experiencing PTSD. But Will thinks differently. Dustin returns home and hears something strange in his trash can. He grabs a hockey stick and opens the lid, but finds nothing. He continues to hear rustling. He assumes it's a raccoon. I think we all know it's not a raccoon. We then see Mike still calling out to 11 on the walkie-talkie, which he has done every single night since her disappearance. His parents grow frustrated, but Mike refuses to give up hope. He doesn't want to believe she's actually gone. The episode ends with Hopper driving into the woods as dusk falls. He walks through trees to a hidden cabin. The door opens and there she is, 11, alive and well. Her curly hair is longer now. Her expression is cautious but familiar. She's been living in secret this whole time, hidden from the world. Hopper brings her dinner, Eggo waffles of course. They sit in a comfortable silence. She is safe for now. Going right into episode 2 called Trick or Treat Freak, grab some Eggos and buckle up because we're heading into Halloween night where things are about to get seriously strange. The episode starts with a flashback of how 11 escapes the Upside Down. She emerges from a hole in the wall at the school and she flees into the forest. Hunted by agents, alone and starving, we see how she survives before Hopper finds her. Cut to the woods, Hopper's cabin is looking peaceful until a door bursts open. 11 appears, scowling. She's very frustrated. Hopper, who is now her secret caretaker, lays down some rules. She is allowed to dress up for Halloween, but no going outside. No exceptions. He promises her candy if she obeys his rules. It's clear she's getting restless and their dynamic is equal parts fatherly and tense. We go to Will's house in the morning before school. He's getting ready in his room with the help of Joyce when she notices one of his drawings of the monster figure in the sky that he saw at the arcade the night before. She's very concerned and she asks him what it was, but he assures her everything is fine and that it's just a sketch for a story he's writing. What a liar. The boys, Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas stride into school in full Ghostbusters gear, proton packs, jumpsuits, the whole thing. But when they enter the halls, they are shocked and embarrassed to see that no one else is wearing costumes. They're alone and suddenly painfully aware of how young and geeky they look. At Hawkins High, Steve and Nancy are prepping for Tina's Halloween party. Steve gives Nancy a loving pep talk, reminding her to have fun tonight. But Nancy is quiet because her mind is still on Barb, rightfully so, and there's a heaviness she can't shake, and Steve just doesn't quite understand it. Dustin and Lucas see Max in the hallway and ask her to go trick-or-treating with them. They thought it would be nice to invite her since she is new and probably doesn't have any friends, but she makes fun of them, brushes them off, and walks away. It's Halloween night and the boys are trick-or-treating, excitement's in the air. Max surprises them actually by joining in, and she's dressed as Michael Myers, which I love, and she plays a prank on them, jumping out with a knife and scaring them half to death, and it's the first time we actually see her let loose. I love it. As the group walks through the neighborhood, Dustin and Lucas continue vying for Max's attention. Mike, meanwhile, is quiet and distant and still thinking about 11. At the Halloween party, Nancy downs drink after drink, visibly unraveling, and when Steve tries to stop her, she completely lashes out. In a drunken haze, she blurts out what she's been holding in since Barb's disappearance, I guess, and she says, quote unquote, "This is all bullshit, we're bullshit." Steve is stunned and hurt that their perfect couple act is crumbling in front of everyone. In the background, we do see Jonathan. He's come probably only to keep an eye on Nancy. He watches it unfold from the sidelines, concerned, heartbroken, and unsure whether to step in. Back on the trick-or-treat route, Will suddenly freezes. He's no longer on a quiet suburban street. He's in the upside down. The air is thick with ash like we've seen last season. The sky is swirling mass of red and black. And then he sees it, the towering shadow monster, stretching across the sky like a living storm, and it turns towards him. But just as suddenly, he snaps back to reality, gasping for air. Mike rushes to his side. Will was trembling and shaken to his core. Something is very, very wrong with him. Later that night, Hopper returns to the cabin with candy and horror movies. It's quiet and cozy and almost normal, but 11 is still staring at the TV, longing and missing Mike, missing her freedom. So she goes against Hopper's rules and she uses her powers to see Mike, who is talking to her on the walkie-talkie in his basement like we saw last episode, and it's just so heartbreaking. As Dustin is getting back home after trick-or-treating, he hears something in his trash can again. He walks towards it, very scared, and we see his shocked expression as he opens the garbage can and the episode ends. Episode 3, The Pollywog. Things start moving fast, secrets unravel, relationships shift, and a mysterious new creature crawls into the spotlight. Let's break it all down. We open right where we left off with Dustin bringing whatever he found in his trash can into his house. He takes his turtle out of the tank, poor turtle, and puts the creature he just found inside of it. It's small, slug-like, with tiny limbs and a lizard-like face, kind of cute. Dustin seems very excited about it and names him Dart, but we all know with this show that this can't be a good thing. In another flashback with 11, we see the night that Hopper finally finds her in the woods after she escaped the Upside Down last season. She's cold and starving, and they show us how their bond formed, how they have a special code over the radio, and how he's really doing everything he can to make it safe for her to leave again. I love these flashbacks because we really get to see how their relationship has grown and how much 11 really does mean to Hopper. Back in real time, 11 is getting more and more frustrated that she's in hiding and she can't speak to her friends or to anyone really. Hopper keeps telling her that she'll be able to leave soon, but she's counting the days, and at this point it's been over 200 stuck inside the cabin, so when Hopper leaves, she goes against his rules and she leaves too. On the way to school, Bob thinks he's being helpful by giving Will advice, telling him that the next time he has one of his hallucinations to stand his ground instead of run away. This comes into play later. We shift to Dustin in the library. He's checking out books all about different types of reptiles and amphibians. He's trying to find out what Dart is, but he comes to the conclusion that he has found a brand new species. Steve and Nancy are finally talking after what happened the night before at the party. She says she doesn't remember any of it, she's too drunk, but Steve is standing his ground, saying that just because she doesn't remember it doesn't mean that she wasn't speaking truthfully. He asks her to say that she loves him, but she can't. So basically their relationship is over, and 5 seconds later she's with Jonathan. Welp. Hopper realizes that all the rotten crops are all within a 3-mile radius surrounding Hawkins' laboratory. He is sure that whatever rot is spreading is coming from there. He has Dr. Owen's team collect samples to test, and Dr. Owen seems to know something but is playing dumb. Dustin sneaks Dart into school and shows him off to the boys, but Will instantly recognizes the sound it makes, saying that he remembers it from the Upside Down. The boys try to warn him, but Dustin doesn't want to hear it. He already loves Dart and feels proud that he found a new species. Back at Nancy's house, her and Jonathan are working together and scheming. After her emotional breakdown at the party, she's done playing nice and she's ready to expose Hawkins' lab for covering up Barb's death. She calls Barb's parents and asks to meet in person, but not to call back on the phone because it isn't safe. We then get a quick glimpse of an unknown person listening in on the phone call. Back at school, Max is starting to realize how standoffish Mike is with her, so she pushes him and questions him about why he doesn't want her a part of the gang. He can't tell her about 11, so he just tells her that she's annoying. She's getting really curious about what happened to Mike and the boys in last season, but they're all afraid to open up and put her at risk for knowing too much. 11, who we saw earlier escape the cabin, made her way to the school and overheard this conversation from afar. Things get much worse when Dart escapes Dustin's locker and they all split up searching the halls and every room to find him. Dustin does end up finding him in the bathroom, but when Mike and Max walk in, he doesn't tell them that he found him. Will, who doesn't know that they found Dart, is still looking when he hears a noise that sounds very familiar, so he follows it and suddenly he's back in the Upside Down. He runs outside and he sees the monster figure again, but this time, thanks to Bob's advice, he doesn't run away. He stands his ground, but it was actually a terrible idea because instead of the monster disappearing in seconds like it has, it enters inside of him through his mouth and the episode ends very chilling. Episode 4, Will the Wise, picks up exactly where we left off. The danger is no longer just outside the buyer's home, it's inside of Will. Joyce finds Will trembling, pale, and soaked in sweat after his terrifying encounter with the shadow monster. She brings him home and starts to ask him what happened. At first he says that everything just went blank and he doesn't really know what happened, but the more she pushes him, the more he opens up. Will broke my heart when he starts to cry, saying that he really tried to keep the monster away, but that it got him. He said that he felt it everywhere and that he even still feels it now. At the cabin, Hopper storms in furious. He knows 11 broke his no-leaving rule and she tries to defend herself, but Hopper shuts her down. The fight escalates so bad where 11 is using her powers to throw things at him. She tells him that he's just like Papa, referring to Dr. Brenner. She runs into her room and slams the door and breaks down crying. He continues yelling at her from outside the door, and she screams so loud using her powers to shatter every window in the cabin. In the morning, Joyce notices something new. Will's body is freezing cold, but he says that he feels hot, like he's burning from the inside, and he also tells her he doesn't recognize the place in his visions anymore. It's not just the Upside Down, it's something deeper. And Joyce is now certain Will's symptoms are supernatural and not medical. Since he's so cold, Joyce tries to draw him a warm bath, but he ends up draining the water and telling her that it likes it cold. And then he eerily walks away, and she's left with this shocked expression on her face, which I don't blame her. It was super creepy. Cut to Nancy and Jonathan, who are going through with their plan to speak with Barb's parents and expose Hawkins' lab. While they're sitting on the bench waiting for Barb's mom, who is late, they start noticing random people staring at them suspiciously. So they try to leave, but the car won't start, and a man comes right up to their window, knocking and smiling. Joyce, who is now terrified for her son's life, calls Hopper to come over to speak with Will. Will tells Hopper that he has these memories in the back of his mind, except that they aren't his and that they aren't old memories. He feels like they are things that are happening right now all at once. He describes underground tunnels spreading throughout Hawkins, and Hopper pieces it together that whatever Will is seeing is related to the rotting crops he's been investigating. To get a better idea of what Will is actually seeing, they ask him to draw it out. Heading over to the school where Mike and the boys are worried about Will because he didn't show up today, Mike, not knowing that Dustin has Dart, says that they have to find him because they think it's connected to what Will is experiencing, and that maybe if they have Dart, they can help Will somehow. Dustin seems conflicted because he looks upset and like he knows he should turn Dart over, but he doesn't. In this emotional scene at the cabin, 11 is cleaning up after her and Hopper's fight. She finds a loose floorboard and underneath a box labeled Hawkins Lab that is filled with information on a woman named Terry Ives, an Indiana woman who claims her daughter Jane was stolen at birth. She finds a picture of this lady with Dr. Brenner and uses her powers to see the woman like she did with Mike, and once she gets close, Terry, who appears to actually see 11, looks up at her and calls her Jane. Terry is her biological mother, and the scene ends with 11 breaking down and calling out Mama. This scene is so sad because 11 is realizing that Hopper, the one person she actually trusts, has been keeping this secret from her. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan get brought to Hawkins' laboratory, where Dr. Owen shows them, whatever this is, and that it's his job to contain it. He expresses that even though it's sad that Barb died, it was a mistake that he's trying to keep from happening again. He says he's trying his best to keep it contained, but the more attention they bring to it, the harder it is to keep from getting out of hand, basically threatening them not to tell Barb's parents. We shift back to Will, who's drawing picture after picture while Joyce and Hopper connect them. They're connecting the pictures all over the floor, and Joyce can't figure out what it is, but Hopper thinks that there's some sort of vines, and he storms out. We find out a little bit more about Max's personal life in the scene where her brother Billy sees her talking to Lucas outside of school, and when she gets in the car, he grabs her by her wrist, calls her a piece of shit, and threatens her not to talk to Lucas or any of the boys anymore. Max is visibly upset afterwards, and in this moment, we see why she had this wall up with the boys at first. She has a toxic life at home, and it honestly makes you feel really, really bad for her. We go back to Nancy and Jonathan after they leave Hawkins' lab. They reveal that they have a tape recorder in their bag the entire time they were there and have recorded everything Dr. Owen said to them. Jonathan turns to her and asks if she still wants to do this, and she says, quote, "Let's burn this lab to the ground." Dustin returns home to check on Dart, but sees that he has broken the tank. There's glass everywhere with this gross slime on it. He then sees a trail of blood, and when he follows it, he's shocked to see Dart eating his pet cat. Dart turns and screeches, and now we can clearly see that Dart is a Demogorgon. Dustin got himself in some shit, and he should have listened to his friends. In the last scene, we see Hopper, who after he left Joyce's house has gone to the field where all the rotten crops are and starts digging this huge hole. He gets to a certain point where he hits this gooey slime that starts hissing like it's alive, but he keeps going anyway, and he opens up the hole enough for him to crawl inside of it. I don't know why he would do this, but when he jumps down, he finds himself in the tunnel that is very similar to the Upside Down. We see the ash in the air, and he literally mumbles, "Oh Jesus," and the episode ends. We're going right into one of my personal favorite episodes of the season, called Digged Up. The episode begins with Joyce trying to call Hopper. He isn't answering. Obviously, we know that he's down in the tunnel, but she doesn't know that yet. While she waits for his call back, she's still trying to connect all the pictures that Will is drawing and make some sense of it. While she's doing that, Mike has come to visit Will. Will starts telling him that he feels it inside of him and how he sees whatever the shadow monster is seeing. The more the monster spreads around Hawkins, the more connected to it he feels. Mike was trying to make him feel better, telling him it's actually pretty cool and that he's now like a super spy who's able to spy on the shadow monster, and that maybe Will's connection to him could be how they find a way to stop it. But Will definitely doesn't see it that way. We shift to Hopper in the tunnels. He's surrounded by the creepy, pulsating vines that look straight out of the Upside Down. He hears a screech and he pulls out his gun. I don't think that would really help him, but he's trying. He follows the sound and looks up and sees this. What the F is that? It hisses and shoots something out at him. He starts to cough. He gets all disoriented and he falls to the ground. And remember, at this point, nobody knows where he is. Will pops up from a dream and rushes to his mom to tell her that he saw Hopper and that he thinks Hopper's in trouble and that he's going to die soon. It cuts right back to Hopper waking up in the tunnels, gasping for air. He starts to throw up this black, thick substance, so gross. He struggles to get back up on his feet, but he manages and begins to walk back where he came from, but quickly realizes the tunnels that are very much alive have shifted and closed off his pathway. Covering his nose, trying not to breathe in any more spores, he tries to find another way out. Dustin, who's lying to basically everyone he loves, pretends to be on the phone with a neighbor who says that they saw their pet cat wandering the neighborhood. His mom is so upset about their cat being lost, and obviously he can't tell her that the cat has been eaten by a Demogorgon, so he says that it ran away so that she would go searching while he waits at home. After she leaves, he puts on all this padding, which is so funny to me. He sets up a trail of what I'm guessing is candy on the floor for Dart to follow that leads all the way outside down into the cellar. Dustin waits in the garage, still in his full gear, waiting for Dart to follow the trail and go down the cellar. We see through a hole in the garage Dart is following the trail. Dustin starts whispering to himself a little too loud. Dart hears him and turns right around. Dustin now is terrified, so he jumps out the garage, attacking him with the hockey stick, and hits Dart right into the cellar, closing the door behind him. 11 hitches a ride to go find her mom by using the letters Hopper had in the box. When she arrives, we finally see the heartbreaking story of what happened to Terry. She's basically being trapped in her mind after being experimented on by Dr. Brenner. Using her powers, 11 connects physically with her mom and gets flashes of a baby being taken away, electricity, and the words breathe, sunflower, and rainbow. It's her first real glimpse at her own past, and it changes everything for her. In this next scene, we're finally introduced to Murray, who becomes a big and iconic character on the show. Nancy and Jonathan go to see him for help bringing down Hawkins' lab. He's a big conspiracy theorist and wants to help them, especially for covering up Barb's death. With everything he has and their tape recording, they ask if it's enough to bring down the lab, but unfortunately, he thinks that nobody will believe them because it all sounds a little insane, but if they water it down, people may actually listen to what they're saying. So that's their plan right now. Back at the buyer's house, Will keeps drawing strange patterns that don't make sense to them until Bob. It turns out Will's drawings form an enormous map of the underground tunnels spreading beneath Hawkins. Bob, being the sweet, nerdy genius he is, figures it out and realizes it's centered near the pumpkin patches where the rot began. Joyce finally understands this is where Hopper has to be. Dustin recruits Steve for help. He asks if Steve still has his iconic nail-studded bat, and the two set out to deal with Dart. It's an unexpected friendship, but it kicks off one of the best duos in Stranger Things history. Lucas and Max meet up at the arcade. Lucas, who we now see has a little bit of a crush on Max, decides to open up and finally tell her the truth about what happened to Will, but of course she doesn't believe him. She thinks he made up this whole elaborate story to impress her. He ends up getting really upset, saying that he's risking his life to tell her this, and she just keeps making fun of him and walks away. Joyce, Bob, Will, and Mike follow Will's map, and sure enough, they find Hopper trapped deep in the tunnels, tangled in vines. It's tense, but they manage to free him just in time. However, as they're tearing apart the vines, Will suddenly collapses in pain. His connection to the Upside Down is growing, and it's clear the shadow monster's hold on him is getting stronger. Again, the episode ends not so great for Will. Episode 6, The Spy. This one starts so intense. We open immediately after the events of episode 5. Will is convulsing and screaming after the shadow monster invaded his body. Dr. Owens and his team rush him into the Hawkins lab medical area while Joyce panics. It's honestly so scary. Owens tells Joyce that Will's body temperature is dangerously low. His body wants the cold. Cut to Dustin and Steve, a totally different vibe. They're teaming up after Dustin confessed he was hiding a strange pet, Dart, who's now grown into a small demogorgon and escaped. He brings Steve to the cellar, and all Steve finds is that same goo Dustin found the other episode on the tank. It's clearly his shedding. They find a huge hole in the wall that leads out of the cellar. Dart has escaped again. We get this quick little scene of some unknown men in suits coming into the buyer's home and taking photos of Will's drawings. Joyce is speaking to the team at Hawkins lab and describing Will's recent symptoms. She's angry at Dr. Owens for not listening sooner. She's demanding he's transferred to a real hospital, but they say that's not possible. Meanwhile, Nancy, Jonathan, and Murray are mailing out the recording of Dr. Owens in the lab to all the main news outlets. They toast to "taking down the man." Murray lets them stay the night since they're drinking. He's responsible, guys. They start the night in separate rooms, but they end up meeting up in the middle of the night, wink wink, and they share their first kiss and go to bed together. Ugh, poor Steve. Hopper is being held at Hawkins' lab as well because he could possibly be contaminated after being down in the tunnels and breathing in those spores for so long. We saw in last episode he was throwing up the black bile, so it makes sense. They put him in this suit and send him down to show him the root of where all the vines are coming from. You know, the thing that's been rotting all the crops in Hawkins Hopper's been looking into. He asks why they aren't burning it, and Dr. Owen says there's a complication. When they do, Will feels it. Will wakes up in the hospital, seems very confused, and doesn't remember Bob, Dr. Owens, Hopper, or even what hospital he's in. Will turns to Dr. Owens and says, "They hurt me," referring to his team burning away the vines, which we now know is connected to the Upside Down and to Will. Will threatens them, saying they shouldn't have done that. He doesn't like that, meaning the shadow monster. Dr. Owens tells Joyce and Hopper that the monster is using Will as a spy to see what the humans are doing. Joyce is worried Will won't remember who he is anymore and will be completely gone soon. Dustin asks Lucas to help capture Dart in the woods with him and Steve, so of course he has to get his girl Max just to prove to her what he told her the other day was true. She has to sneak out though, because remember, she has a scary older brother Billy who doesn't want her talking to the boys anymore. Dustin and Steve head into the woods waiting for Max and Lucas. They start by using raw meat as bait for Dart. Dustin asks Steve for some advice on girls, and this is where their brotherly bond begins to form. Hopper, who we know has been stuck in Hawkins' lab since he was found in the tunnels, is using his walkie-talkie to try to get in touch with Eleven back at the cabin. He apologizes, telling her he's not mad at her about their fight, he just wants to protect her. Little does he know she's not even there and that she's gone to see her mother. Back at the lab, Dr. Owens and his team are looking at Will's brain scans. They're comparing last week to yesterday to 1 hour ago. Clearly, whatever's happening to Will is only getting worse, and none of them have any suggestions on how to help him. The rest of the team thinks that they should keep burning away the vines and tunnels that have spread, even if it means it kills Will. But Dr. Owens is completely against it, but they all think that at this rate it's spreading, Will is gone by the end of the day. Back to Will at the hospital, he suddenly has this epiphany that he knows exactly how to stop the shadow monster. They spread out all of his drawings on the table in front of him, and he points out a specific spot that he says he knows the shadow monster doesn't want him to go to. Dr. Owen's team, of course, gears up, and they head right to that spot. At the same time, Dustin, Lucas, Max, and Steve are setting up a trap in the woods for Dart. They hide out till dark, waiting for him to take the bait. As Lucas and Max sit on lookout, they have this little moment where she opens up about her life. She reveals her parents are divorced, and how her life is so much worse now because her stepbrother Billy is awful. We know that. In this moment, we also see that Max may be starting to like Lucas now too. So cute. They finally see Dart, but he's not taking their bait, so of course Steve decides to fight it himself. Gotta love Steve, but man, this was a bad idea. He has his nail bat, and we see Dart, who's grown a lot. He's terrifying. Another Demogorgon starts creeping up behind Steve. Lucas screams out for warning. At this point, I had the chills. It was so crazy. Steve makes a run for the school bus that they're hiding in. One of the Demogorgons gets in, and Steve starts bashing it with his bat. Dustin's calling for help on the walkie-talkie, but nobody's responding. One of the Demogorgons makes his way to the top of the bus. Steve goes to hit it with his bat, but right as he's about to, we hear a screech from a distance, and the Demogorgons run away. Pan back to Dr. Owen's team. They followed Will's directions into the tunnels, but it was a trap. The demo dogs attack the team, Dr. Owens loses contact with them and realizes they've been deceived. The monster used Will to lead these men to their deaths. Hence, the name of the episode, The Spy. Will starts saying sorry and that it made him do it. He then warns his mother that she should leave because they're almost there. Will is uncontrollably leading the Demogorgons right to Hawkins' lab. The episode ends just upon their arrival. This episode, The Lost Sister, is not my favorite. I'm sure a lot of you agree, but let's break it down because there's some important stuff in here. It kicks off where we left 11 2 episodes ago. Quick flashes pop up of what she saw when she used her powers last and found out what happened to her mother, Terry. She sees the rainbow room, the experiments, her mom's paralyzed state, and another little girl. Elle believes her mom wants her to find this girl. Since Terry can no longer speak, she is communicating with Elle telepathically. Elle and Terry's caretaker, who we learn is Terry's sister Becky, go through Terry's things from Hawkins' lab to hopefully find something about who this girl is. She finds a paper stating that the young girl they're looking for vanished from London years ago. Using her nosebleed-inducing telepathy, holding the photograph, Elle tries to find her and ends up seeing the girl we saw in episode 1. With the number 008 tattooed on her, just like 11, she leaves immediately to go after her. Cut to Elle on a Greyhound, headed to Illinois. She uses her powers again and gets these quick flashes of the girl's location. When she arrives, she's wandering the streets till eventually she stumbles into a sketchy warehouse hideout and boom, there they are, the masked gang we saw in episode 1 and the girl, who we find out is named Callie. Now we know Elle can't really talk that good. All she can say at first is that she saw Callie in the rainbow room and that she's her sister. Callie sees her tattoo, they hug, so sweet, nothing bonds you like having shared trauma. They open up to each other about the nightmares of Hawkins' lab. Callie shows off her gift a bit, showing it can be beautiful too. In this kind of emotional scene later that night, Callie tells Eleven she thinks Terry sent her there for a reason, that they belong together. They are each other's home. I don't like the vibes I get from this convo, honestly. She's definitely trying to get Elle to not return back to Hawkins. Elle uses her powers to visit the cabin, and she hears Hopper's call that we saw last episode, where he was apologizing about their fight and saying he will be home soon. But she's rudely awoken by Callie, who forces her downstairs to speak with her crew and tell her their next plan. They show her all these IDs of the people they killed because they somehow caused them to be in the situation they're in. We see a flashback of episode 1 when we saw them fleeing the scene, but we didn't know what they did. We now know that they went to this guy's house and killed him. I guess to give her some sort of test, Callie brings Elle to this train and tells her to push it towards them, to use her anger to channel the rage from the lab, of isolation, of all the trauma, and Elle begins to see these flashes of very painful memories, but she's actually able to do it. Callie shows Elle their wall of targets, more people they want to find and kill for causing them harm. They ask if Elle recognizes anyone on it from Hawkins' lab maybe. She actually does. The guy she saw in the visions of her mother being electrocuted. Callie reveals he also tortured her as a child, so that's their next victim. Elle uses her powers again to track him down. She's able to find him. They come up with a plan and they head out. So of course they give Elle this crazy look and they all walk out thinking they look badass, but I think it's hilarious. They stop at a gas station and distract the owner while they rob the place. It's clear Elle is uncomfortable doing it, but finally feeling like she fits in somewhere, she grabs the Eggos. The owner catches them and pulls a gun on them. Elle, with no hesitation, throws him across the store. Is she as innocent as we think she is? We hear sirens in the distance and they make a run for it. After their failed robbery attempt, they show up at their target's home. Elle uses her powers again to see what he's doing inside, making sure that he's alone. Thinking he's just watching TV by himself, they mask up and head in. They successfully break into his home, find out his name is Ray. The others begin to go through his house and are just stealing all his stuff, but Eleven and Callie unmask themselves and ask him if he remembers them. He says no until Callie uses her powers to make him see them as children again, and suddenly his memories return. Eleven begins to just throw him around the room and they fuck him up. To save his life, he offers to help them find Brenner, who Elle believed was dead. Ray is claiming he's still alive. Being influenced by Callie, Elle begins to strangle him to death despite what he says. She then sees a photo of him with 2 young girls and stops, right as the rest of the crew find the 2 girls hiding in their bedroom calling the police. Elle doesn't want to go through with this anymore. Callie begins to yell at her. She pulls out a gun to finish the job, but Elle uses her powers to throw it out the window. Their moral compasses are clashing. Back at the warehouse, Callie and Elle are having a conversation where Callie says she remembers the day Elle didn't come to the rainbow room anymore. And that is what gave her the courage to escape Hawkins' lab, and she ran away as far as she could. She decided then to use her gifts to get revenge on those who hurt them. She gives Elle the chance to stay with them and fight, or go back to Hawkins and hide. Attempting to give her the rage to fight and find Brenner, Callie makes Elle see him, which causes her to cry and emotionally break down. I actually think this is really cruel, and I was proud of Elle when she screams at her to get out of her head. Elle, who's in her feels now, is holding Hopper's shirt and when she uses her powers to see him to check on him. Finding him at Hawkins' lab, she senses the danger they're in back home. Right at the same time, the cops bust into the warehouse. Luckily, Callie is able to use her powers to make the cops see an empty room. They head to the van to escape the second the cops walk away, but Elle decides to not go with them. Callie fights her on her choice, saying that people back at Hawkins can't save her, to which Elle responds, "No, but I can save them." Episode ends with Elle right back where she was in the beginning of this episode, on a Greyhound, heading back to Hawkins. Episode 8, The Mind Flayer, the most heartbreaking episode in my opinion. Let's get into it. In this insanely intense opening scene, the demo dogs have arrived at Hawkins' lab, killing everyone in their path. Mike thinks they should put Will to sleep because he is the spy. If Will knows where they are, then the shadow monster knows where they are. Joyce hesitates at first, but ultimately realizes Will isn't himself, so they go through with it and put him right to sleep. Just then, Hopper and Dr. Owens arrive after being chased by the demo dogs and move them to another safer room. We also see all the employees of Hawkins' lab being killed left and right. It's crazy. They head to the security room, which is actually smart because now they're able to watch the demo dogs on all the security cams and see where they are, but then all the power goes out. Cut to Steve, Max, Lucas, and Dustin, who barely survived the fight with Dart and the other demo dog 2 episodes ago. Lucas and Dustin are arguing over the fact Dustin lied to the gang about keeping Dart, putting them all in danger, yada yada yada. Steve hears loud roaring coming from the lab and they head towards it. Back at the lab, everyone is dead besides the main crew. Someone needs to reset the breakers. They realize the security system's down, meaning all doors are locked. Bob, being the tech guy he is, volunteers to reboot the system while Dr. Owens guides him through the maze-like halls. Finally, Nancy and Jonathan arrive at Hawkins' lab after being on their little honeymoon. They quickly realize something isn't right. Obviously, they see the power is out. Just as they arrive, out pop Steve, Dustin, Max, and Lucas, and they're all reunited for the first time in episodes. Bob makes it to the power switch and turns on all the lights successfully and opens all the doors. He tells everyone to go and not wait for him. Get the kids out. At the same time, now that the power is back, the gang on the outside opens the gates and they're heading in. One group's trying to get out, one group wants to get in. It's madness. Dr. Owen stays back to guide them out with the cameras, bless his heart. Hopper and Joyce get Mike and Will to the exit, Will being still unconscious, carried by Hopper. Joyce hesitates at the door, waiting for Bob. Bob's making his way out slowly with the guidance of Dr. Owens. He has a clear shot out, until he doesn't. He knocks something over, drawing a demo dog's attention towards him. He makes it to the door where Joyce was still waiting. They smile at each other for just a minute before a demo dog jumps on him and unfortunately kills him. I hate recording that. Joyce is being forced to watch him die. Hopper runs back in with a gun, but at that point a bunch of other demo dogs jump out and they have no choice but to run and leave him behind. Hopper has to drag frantic Joyce out of the lab. Guys, I can't explain how devastating this is to watch, and also explain I loved Bob. This was brutal. Even rewatching it back, it broke my heart. On the bright side, the rest of the gang escapes safely. In the aftermath, back at the Byers' house, Hopper tries to call military backup to Hawkins' lab, but nobody believes him, of course. Joyce is a mess, locked up in her room. Everyone's feeling super defeated. Mike, though, says they can't let Bob die in vain. He still wants to fight. They come to the realization, which I think we've all known this whole entire time, is that everything is connected. Will, the tunnels, the Demogorgons, it's a hive mind. This is where they give it the name Mind Flayer. They'll use Will to find out how to defeat him. The Mind Flayer knows everything Will knows, so to fight back, they decide to keep Will in the dark. Literally. They cover the windows and every inch of their garage to make it unrecognizable to Will. They tie him up and try to communicate with real Will. He wakes up and starts freaking out, screaming over and over again, "Why am I tied up?" in a very demonic voice. Obviously, the Mind Flayer's in control. To try to bring out real Will, Joyce, Charlie, and Mike begin telling him things about himself, like his birthday, the things he likes, stories from their childhood. Mike recalls the day they met and became friends. We can see Will fighting the monster inside of him. Hopper then notices he's doing Morse code with his fingers. They figure out he is saying here. Shit gets crazy here. He keeps tapping out Morse code and he ends up spelling out close gate. Before they even have a chance to figure out what he means, the phone rings in the house and Will hears it. Now he knows where he is, which means the Mind Flayer knows where they are. Immediately his body starts to shake. They hear roars outside. The demo dogs are coming. They prepare to fight. Hopper and Nancy have guns at least. Everyone else is gonna have to start swinging or something because they have no weapons. Lucas has this tiny ass slingshot. Joyce and Jonathan have no weapons. I don't know what they're gonna do. The demo dogs are surrounding the entire house, but then they hear something else coming. Whatever it is throws a demo dog into the house, already dead. What the fuck? In this badass moment and closing scene, 11 walks in with her bloody nose. She wrecked those demo dogs outside. The look on Mike's face when he sees her brought tears to my eyes. Oh my god, it was so beautiful, but also so emotional. What an ending. Here we are at the season finale, The Gate. So basically I cried throughout the whole opening of this episode. It opens where we left off. Mike and the others finally reunite with 11. We see the emotional moment where Mike embraces 11, relieves she's alive. but soon the tension rises as Mike learns that Hopper secretly kept 11 hidden for nearly a year. Mike is furious. He starts hitting Hopper, filled with so many emotions, and Hopper just holds him and hugs him. Max attempts to introduce herself, but Elle swerves her and walks away. Joyce and Elle embrace each other, and Elle quickly asks to see Will. Joyce is about to tell her everything that's happened, but 11 says she already knows. She saw it. Remember last episode when Will said in Morse code, "Close the gate"? Well, they ask 11 if she's able to do that since she's done it before. She says she can, but Mike is so worried for her, telling her to please be careful, he can't lose her again. They're about to kiss, but Hopper cockblocks. So annoying. Let these kids have a moment, man. They were separated for almost a year. We shift to Will, who's obviously still possessed by the shadowy entity known as the Mind Flayer. Joyce remembers the monster hates heat, so Jonathan, Nancy, and Joyce come up with a plan to take Will to the cabin, tie him to the bed, crank up heaters, and light a fire. Basically, a makeshift exorcism. Billy shows up at the buyer's house looking for Max. He's very angry, like scarily angry. He shoves Steve to the ground, storms into the house, starts throwing Lucas around. Honestly, what the fuck? He's insane, and I wouldn't be upset if he died. Steve and him start going at it again. Steve fucks him up at first, but then he starts losing pretty bad. The kids are just watching. Steve is so close to death when Max grabs the needle they use to put Will to sleep and stabs her brother with it. We get this eerie shot of all the demo dogs coming together at the gate like they know 11 is coming. This can't be good. Elle and Hopper arrive at Hawkins' lab in their attempt to close the gate. Elle's mind is then flooded with terrible memories of this place, but she's so brave and heads right in. At the cabin, Joyce, Nancy, and Jonathan have Will tied up and the heat cranked up. Will wakes up and screams, "It hurts, let me go," as they drive heat into him to force the entity out. The idea is to make his body inhospitable, so the Mind Flayer must eject. I can't imagine how heartbreaking this is for Joyce, but fueled by the intense emotions of losing Bob and trying not to lose her son, she turns the heat up higher. While that's happening, the kids, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, Max, and surprisingly Steve, even though he got the shit beat out of him and his face is busted, enter the underground tunnels leading toward the gate to distract and draw away the demo dogs from 11. Making their way to the gate between our world and the Upside Down, Hopper finds and helps a wounded Dr. Owens, who is honestly in shock to see that 11 is still alive. Will at the cabin is still convulsing in pain. Jonathan urges Joyce to stop, that it's killing him, until they see this. These black veins moving up his neck. Will manages to get a hand free and begins to strangle Joyce. At the same time, the crew in the tunnels ignite gasoline to lure the creatures away from the lab. The tunnels begin to burn away, which causes Will to let go of his mother, and the monster leaves as a smoke cloud exits his mouth and flies off. Will wakes up and seems to be his normal self. The demo dogs run from the gate to head towards the fire, clearing the way for 11 and Hopper. Now that Will is free of the Mind Flayer, Jonathan tells Hopper over walkie-talkie it's time to close the gate. Hopper and 11 ride the elevator down to the pit with a shimmering portal. As the gang in the tunnels tries to escape, they run into a demo dog. Dustin recognizes him though. It's Dart. He has a moment with him, offers him some chocolate, and Dart lets them go. They're able to exit the tunnels safely. As they reach the gate, 11 taps into her powers. She remembers advice from Callie to channel anger. She thinks back on Brenner's abuse and her time at the lab. With that emotional energy, she unleashes her powers. Demo dogs come out, Hopper fires to hold them off. 11 levitates, screaming and using every ounce of power she has. Finally, she closes the gate, the portal snaps shut, the monster army collapses, the immediate threat ends, 11 and Hopper embrace. After all the action's done, the show wraps up with some quieter scenes. 1 month later, the lab is shut down, justice has been served for Barb's family, Hawkins' lab is exposed for being the cause of Barb's death. Hopper and Dr. Owens meet up at a diner. Owens gives Hopper a valid birth certificate for 11, aka Jane. The kids attend the snowball dance. Dustin, after being rejected by girls, is pulled into a dance with Nancy. Mike and 11 finally share a kiss, and so do Lucas and Max. But beneath the happy exterior is some unease. The final shot shows the upside-down version of Hawkins Middle School and the Mind Flayer looming, so even in victory, there's a threat left. That's a wrap on Season 2 of Stranger Things. Thank you so much for watching if you've come this far. I had so much fun going down memory lane with you all. Thumbs up the video if you enjoyed it. Keep an eye out for the Season 3 and 4 recaps as well. Make sure to subscribe because we will be covering the final season. We're so excited to see how this all ends. Thank you again and see you next time.